Hello and welcome. You're watching News Central TV. I am Judith at TV. Here are stories making headlines beyond the continent. And we begin in North America, where 12 jurors continue deliberating for a second day in New York in the trial of the former U.S. president over a hush money payment to an adult film actress. Less than 6 months before an election in which Trump is seeking to return to the White House, the stakes are high both for the 77-year-old personally and for the country. Trump is accused of falsifying business records to reimburse his ex-lawyer, Michael Cohen, for a $130,000 US dollar payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels, afraid that her account of an alleged sexual encounter could doom his 2016 presidential campaign against Hillary Clinton.
For America. The whole world is watching, and it's a very sad day for New York. I've gone through 2 of these trials already. So that's it. It's a disgrace. The millions and millions of dollars that are spent daily on this case. Outside, it looks like it's Fort Knox, like they're guarding this. I've never seen so many policemen. Now with and by the way, everyone's against this case. I haven't seen one legal scholar or expert in the law saying that this case should have been filed.
For more on this, I'm joined by our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. Afia, what's happening in court today?
Well, today the jury requested that they be read back some of the 50 pages of notes that the judges gave them on basically how to do their deliberations. So they're 10 hours into deliberations at the moment. And of course, if somebody gives you 50 pages of notes of how you should deliberate a case, you're not going to remember all of those. So what they've asked for is for some of those notes to be read back. So these pages include general instructions about evidence, making inferences from evidence, the burden of proof in a criminal trial, and what constitutes reasonable doubt. It also includes limiting instructions about certain evidence in this case. For example, newspaper articles, are they in evidence? Which counts, which doesn't, which they should be concerned with, which they shouldn't. They also requested more information about the testimony of Michael Cohen and how the jury is allowed to weigh his credibility and his involvement in the actions central to this case. And more importantly, and probably the most important thing, is the judge, that's Justice Merkham, he's going to reread his instructions about the crimes that Trump has been charged with. Like I said, he gave about 50 pages of notes in his closing argument to the jury. And of course, it's a lot for them to remember. So they're asking for those notes to be reread. And it's all about them really drilling down on the nuts and bolts of this case. If they decide that a part of someone's testimony is untruthful, therefore is everything they've said in the case untruthful. It's about deliberating all those things. So that's what's happening at the moment. And like I said, we're just about 10 hours into the jury deliberation at the moment.
And we understand that elections are like 66 months away. I mean, how significant is this trial in terms of the elections for the United States?
Yeah, the countdown to the election is certainly on. June is upon us. The elections are taking place in November. And of course, this will influence the election one way or the other. Donald Trump has certainly tried to use this to his advantage, saying that this case has only been brought so that he will not be made president again. But in some cases, where he has been arrested, he's seen such a huge influx of donations to the party, from people who have jumped on his bandwagon and who believe that this is all politically motivated. And of course, for the Democrats as well, they are going to try and use it to their advantage. They will say, how can you have a former president who's been on trial, who will or will not have been convicted by that time, to be running for election? So it's a major driver of fundraising for Trump, absolutely. And it's also a real reminder for the Democrats about who their opponent is. And Joe Biden will certainly try and use this and harness this and make this about democracy and the rule of law, and that you shouldn't have someone in power who is so keen and quick to flaunt those two pillars, democracy and the rule of law.
Do we have any idea when the verdict will come?
And that is the question on everybody's lips. That's what everybody wants to know. When are we going to get a verdict? Unfortunately, I cannot tell you when that will be. With these cases, it's all about waiting around. It's all about waiting for the jury to come to their decision. And actually, when we really think about it, it's not a race. We don't necessarily want a jury that's going to come to a quick decision. We want a jury that's going to come to the right decision, who's going to look at all the evidence, look at it properly, look at it thoroughly, and be able to make the right decision in this case. Like I said, we're only 10 hours in, we're in day one or day two, and they are asking to reread some of the evidence, go back over the evidence. It's also worth noting that this particular jury are not sequestered, so they go home every night after the trial. Of course, they are asked not to talk about the case with family or friends, not to give any interviews, anything like that. So it takes as long as it takes. How long is a piece of string, Judith? That's how long it will take for the jury to come back with their verdict.
Well, Afia, many thanks for doing this with us. We appreciate you. And now to Latin America, where Jose Alfredo Cabrera Barrientos, a mayoral candidate for the municipality of Mayanca de Mentides, was shot dead in southern Mexico on Wednesday during a campaign rally. In the meantime, authorities work at the scene where Cabrera was shot dead during a campaign rally in southern Mexico, marking a bloody end to campaigning in a country expected to elect its first woman president this weekend. According to an official count, more than 20 people running for local office have been murdered during what has been a particularly violent election season in the Latin American nation. In the meantime, thousands attended the final campaign rally of Mexico's ruling party presidential candidate Claudia Sheinbaum in the capitals, and that's Zocalo. After nearly 3 months of official campaigning, a former Mexico City mayor, the running candidate, is a front runner with 53% of voter support, a recent poll by research firm Oracolis suggests. Now, the other candidate in the dispute in the former centrist, and that's Deputy Hugo Alvarez Manes, third in the polls.
Amigas y amigos, este 2 de junio vamos a hacer historia. Y también, por primera vez en 200 años de la República, llegaremos las mujeres a la más alta distinción que pueda darnos nuestro pueblo, la presidencia de México. Concluido el proceso electoral, porque de que vamos a ganar, dedicaremos el presupuesto público para garantizar todos los programas sociales, todos los programas del bienestar.
Mucha del pueblo ya despertó, ya no queremos que los gobiernos anteriores nos sigan robando, porque primero están los pobres, antes se enfocaban más en la cabecera de nuestro país y alrededor se la olvidaban.
And heading to Europe, where NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg has called for restrictions in Ukraine using Western weapons to strike targets outside their borders to be reconsidered, a move sought by Kyiv, but opposed for now by its chief backer, Washington. The two-day meeting in Prague is meant to focus on efforts to hamper out a package of support for Ukraine at NATO's summit in Washington in July. But the swirling debate over whether to let Kyiv use arms sent by Western backers to strike inside Russia risks overshadowing the talks.
I believe that the time has come to consider some of these restrictions to enable the Ukrainians to really defend themselves. We need to remember what this is. This is a war of aggression launched by choice by Moscow against Ukraine. Russia invaded another country, invaded Ukraine, and Ukraine has, according to international law, the right to defend themselves. It's enshrined in the UN Charter. And the right for self-defense includes also striking military targets, legitimate military targets outside Ukraine. We are now working on in NATO how NATO can have a bigger role in coordinating the provision of security assistance, the delivery of security assistance and training, to ensure that we have a stronger framework to minimize the risks for new gaps and delays in the supplies of weapons and ammunition and training for the Ukrainians. I welcome the fact that we are now discussing, addressing, working on how to agree a greater NATO role in the coordination of the support and a multi-year financial commitment to ensure more robust and predictable support to Ukraine. Final decisions will be made at the summit. In the meantime, we need to just continue to provide as much support as possible because this is critical for the Ukrainians, but also critical for our own security.
In France, pharmacists began their first workout in 10 years on Thursday, closing up shop over drug shortages, low regulated prices, pharmacy closures, and fears medications could be sold online. After poster and email campaigns to warn of the closures in recent days, patients found around 90% of pharmacies across France closed for the day, with every single one in some regional towns shutting their doors. Local authorities have requisitioned some locations to ensure a legally required minimum coverage. Professionals say they are just as concerned about drug shortages, rural closures, and training reform as about remuneration and working conditions.
Faire un choix entre les patients pour leur donner leur traitement. Après, on essaye de trouver des solutions de substitution auprès des médecins. Donc ça nous fait perdre du temps qu'on n'a pas toujours, parce qu'il y a des médicaments qui n'ont pas de solution de remplacement.
En fait, la sécurité sociale tire les prix vers le bas. Donc du coup, les laboratoires, ils vendent ailleurs qu'en France, mais plus cher. Et du coup, nous, la France, on a des quotas. Donc en fait, si une personne vient à la pharmacie le 20 du mois, le produit n'est pas dispo et on l'aura peut-être entre le 1er et le 10 du mois suivant. Donc au comptoir, on a un patient qui est malade, on lui dit « Ah ben non, votre traitement, vous l'aurez peut-être dans 10 jours. » Et on n'a aucune on ne voit rien en fait, aucune visibilité.
C'est une fois tous les 10 ans, donc effectivement ça ne nous fait pas rire, ça ne nous amuse pas de fermer une officine. On a des charges comme tout le monde à payer, mais il faut marquer le coup et c'est quand même super que les pharmaciens aient réussi à se rallier à ça et à tous fermer pour montrer quand même qu'il y a une vraie détresse en France.
Elsewhere, thousands of people across many streets of New Zealand protested against the centre-right government over its policies towards the indigenous Maori population. Maori leaders have accused Prime Minister Christopher Luxon of the conservative coalition for racist policies, including undermining a treaty that protects indigenous rights. In Wellington, a group gathered outside Parliament as the government announced its spending budget.
Loving the support, loving what I'm seeing. I'm loving the meaning of what it's all about. Proud to be Māori today. And it's been a continuous flow, coming in drips and drabs, but it's doing what it's accomplishing to do, holding up traffic and letting everyone know that there's something going on, and here to support Māori.
We are pretty new here. We're visitors. We've just been here for 2 years, and we've been so grateful to have Aotearoa as a place that everyone can belong and everyone can have a place. But we want the people who belong to the land here.
There's more major headlines beyond the continent after this break. Stay with us. The news continues in Europe, where Spain's parliament gave the final green light to the controversial amnesty bill for Catalan separatists on Thursday. Now, this paves the way for the return of their figurehead, Charles Panimont, after years of self-imposed exile. The legislation seeks to draw a line under years of efforts to prosecute those involved in the failed 2017 Catalan independence bid that triggered Spain's worst political crisis in decades. The text, which has been strongly opposed by Spain's right and far-right opposition, passed by 177 votes in favor to 172 votes against in the 350-seat parliament. One person was absent from the vote.
Como decía, Europa ha dicho sí a la amnistía, alto y claro, por garantizar la igualdad, la separación de poderes, la función jurisdiccional y lo que es aún más importante. Europa ha pregonado a los cuatro vientos que la amnistía apuntala a la normalización institucional y política en Cataluña. Y todo ello gracias a este gobierno, señoría.
Cambia. Ustedes han mentido a los españoles porque prometieron no hacer esto. Están convirtiendo a la mayoría en ciudadanos de segunda. Y si el trueque que aquí están perpetrando, sí, solo tiene un nombre, lo hemos dicho desde el principio, corrupción política. Sí, señoría.
Avui es guanya. Es guanya una batalla del conflicte que existeix des de fa segles entre les dues nacions, la nació catalana i la nació espanyola. Aquesta llei no és perdó, ni és clemència, és victòria. Una victòria democràtica i col·lectiva.
Swedish authorities are accusing Iran of recruiting members of Swedish criminal gangs, some of them children, as proxies to commit acts of violence against Israel and other states and groups in Sweden that Tehran considers a threat. Now, announcement came 2 weeks after nighttime gunfire was reported outside Israel's embassy in Stockholm, and 3 months after police found an unexploded grenade lying on the grounds of the Israeli compound. The Scandinavian country has struggled to contain surging gang violence in recent years, with shootings and bombings now weekly occurrences across the country. The gang violence was originally linked to control over the drugs market.
Beroende givetvis hur dessa kriminella nätverk ser ut i Sverige, så är det ju som så att där kan vara mycket unga individer, till och med barn, som kommer att utföra iranska säkerhetshotande, eller kan komma att utföra iranska säkerhetshotande verksamheter i Sverige. På senare tid så har vi på Säkerhetspolisen uppmärksammat att Iran allt mer börjar rikta in sig mot andra staters intressen i Sverige, och då just specifikt stater som man upplever sig vara i konflikt med.
The United Nations General Assembly held a tribute for late Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, who died in a helicopter crash in northern Iran on May 19. Now, speaking at the Assembly, Secretary General Antonio Guterres said President Raisi led Iran at a challenging time for the country, the region, and globally. He added that the United Nations stands in solidarity with the Iranian people and in the quest for peace, development, and fundamental freedoms.
Days after the tragic accident on 19 May that claimed the lives of His Excellency Sayed Ebrahim Raisi, President of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and his entourage, including His Excellency Mr. Hossein Amir Abdollahian, Minister for Foreign Affairs, and 7 others. I would like to take this opportunity to extend my condolences to the families of the deceased and to the government and people of the Islamic Republic of Iran. President Raisi led Iran at a challenging time for the country, the region, and globally. Just hours before his death, President Raisi met with his Azerbaijani counterpart to inaugurate the Kis Kalasi Dam, the largest joint venture project between the two countries.
Iran's former deputy foreign minister and nuclear negotiator Saeed Jalili registers his candidacy on the first day of Iranian presidential election registration at the Interior Ministry in Tehran. The elections were originally slated for 2025, but were brought forward following the death of Iran's late president, and that's Ibrahim Raisi. The official Iran news says candidate registration for the 14th presidential elections began at 8 a.m. at the Interior Ministry, and presidential hopefuls will have 5 days to register. The main candidates representing Iran's leading political camps are expected to submit their applications closer to the end of the registration process. And in Asia, a Hong Kong court has found 14 of 16 activists and politicians guilty of subversion in the Chinese territory's largest ever trial under the Beijing-imposed national security law. The judges delegated to hear cases brought under the 2020 security law, which does not allow jury trials, shared the reasoning for their decision in a 319-page document posted online. The group was among 47 people, including some of Hong Kong's most prominent supporters of democracy, charged over an unofficial 2020 primary to choose the democracy camp's candidates for a legislative council election that was later postponed.
Waiting for this day for over 3 years. I feel very sad that so many people have been locked up for so long. The day has come. I have come to support them, and I hope the courts in Hong Kong will prove that there is one country, two systems. The court is independent, it's just and fair. So I just go in to support them.
實都好難過啊，係啊，佢哋冇啊，佢真係完全佢個目的就係為咗民主，為咗真民主嘅啫。最初嗰陣時，我哋喺入邊示威㗎。
And Nadil Medvedev has progressed to the French Open third round after his opponent, Mormi Kampanovic, retired from their match. Now, the Russian men's fifth seed, Medvedev, was leading the second round contest 6-1, 5-0 when his Serbian opponent decided he could not continue. His Serbian opponent, 24, shook his head in the direction of the chair umpire after losing his serve for a third time in the second set with 55 minutes on the clock. Medvedev, the 2021 U.S. Open champion, who will play Argentine's 31st seed Mariano Navov and Czech's Tomas Machev next. And that's all on Beyond the Continent. Now remember that you can send us your eyewitness reports to the WhatsApp number now showing on the screen. And make sure to do follow us on social media. We're at News Central TV. You can also watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Judith at TV.